Welcome everyone back to the Being Champions podcast. And actually, I want to welcome back my guys, Coach Jared and Coach Mike. So what's going on, fellas?
Another day. Looking forward to having a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been a while. Can't wait to talk some more coaching and sports and leadership. Love it.
Love it. And guys, like here we are. It's the end of May, and we're kind of wrapping up our school year. And it's kind of a big moment here. This is actually our 25th Being Champions podcast. So what I wanted to do today with the school year wrapping up and all these things going on, I wanted to go spend some time and reflect, right? And I always think about this quote from John Dewey, and he always says, we don't learn from experience. We actually learn by reflecting on that experience, right? And one of our great guests, our first guest, actually, Brett White, he talks about that in his book, Behave, where he says, reflective leaders are effective leaders. So really what I want to do today, fellas, was just kind of reflect. Let's talk about our great guests that we've had. What are some of our big takeaways? What are we taking into summer to make sure we come back better coaches, better leaders, better parents, whatever? How are we going to grow going into the summer?
Well, you made the statement about Brett White. So I really liked one of the things that he said during that podcast was that as coaches, we have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
In order to create an environment of trust, and that vulnerability actually shows strength as a coach. And you know what? You never like the preconceived notions of a coach is the exact opposite of that. And so being vulnerable is allowing your players to take more ownership. You know, we always talk about that coach directed teams don't go as far as player directed teams, you know, and so we've got to give them the means to be able to make their own decisions and to be a bigger part of our teams than they have been in the past. So I just thought that was, and Brett also said that it's the coach that needs to lead the way in being vulnerable. So then it allows everybody else to be that. So.
Yeah, what I love about that, Mike, and a lot of our episodes kind of went around that theme about talking about behaviors, right? And how are we showing up as coaches? Are we willing to be vulnerable? Are we willing to connect beyond just the tactics and strategies? Like even think about Mark Bennett. He had the line where it's performance is a behavior, not an outcome. Trevor Ragan talks about mindset plus environment equals behaviors. Cody Royle was talking about as coaches, we are performers. So I think like the big thing, one of my biggest takeaways was looking at ourselves as coaches. How are we showing up? How is our behaviors? And recognizing that, yes, we're not on the court or we're not on the field. We're not in the weight room actually doing the act, but we are still performers and we really set the tone of the environment we create for our kids.
Yeah, I think, you know, to add to all of this, Jonah Oliver, who we had on a while back with you, Matt, talked a lot about it's not about reducing pressure, but it's about building capacity to embrace more.
Yeah.
And I think when we were first talking about a podcast, you know, or the idea of how can we support our coaches here at Canterbury further, I think the initial takeaways was how can we get obviously to our audience? It's difficult to get everybody in the same room at the same time. It's difficult to have you know, the opportunity to share all of these great conversations in person. And so we immediately felt like, what if we took it to something where they could do it on their own time and create this opportunity? And looking at this Jonah Oliver quote, I think is one of the big pieces that we've tried to do for all of our coaches is help them recognize that it's not about reducing the hard. It's not about reducing the pressure. Instead, it's about building that capacity to know how to handle the pressure and how to coach our athletes through the pressure and how to support their coaching staffs through the pressure. And I just thought like that was so resonating to, I feel like what our mission was when talking about putting this all together. And now we look back and there's 25 episodes of conversation and thoughtfulness and, you know, leadership and sport and you name it. And we're seeing these recurring themes over and over and over again from people that are in different spaces at different levels in different countries that are all saying the same thing from their experiences is that relationships is really the pinnacle. And when we take into consideration that that has to come first, it just creates this environment of success that is not about chasing wins, but chasing the things that actually create wins. And so I was actually listening to just a short video the other day on Instagram. I can't even tell you who the man was, but he had this great acronym. He said LCBR. And I was like, LCBR, okay. And he said, leadership drives culture, which creates behavior, which produces results.
Yep.
And I was like,
Nice.
that is so good. And it's just, again, it's just another validator that it starts with us to create that cultural environment that then the players can adopt so that there's a specific behavior. And now all of a sudden, we're getting consistent results. And it's like, man, if there was one thing that I could give to any coach or encourage any coach to do, it would be to build that 4-stage method and just trust it and see what happens. So it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that what you just gave us. And talking about not about reducing hard. We always in our Captain's Academy show the Kara Lawson video
Yep.
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
things don't get easier, right? You get better at handling hard well. And that's what we're trying to do for athletes. That's what we need to do as coaches as well. And Matt, you brought up also like meeting knowing your players and different elements and things like that, and not just on the court or the field. But I loved what Ceci
Cece.
Ceci Craft brought to it. She says, getting to know your player is not just about like, how many brothers do you have or how many sisters do you have or, who are you dating today or whatever that is, right? She
Yeah.
said, as coaches, we need to learn the ins and outs in our space on the court or on the field, meet them where they are as a competitor and an athlete. So we need to know them, what are they like as a competitor? What are they like as an athlete? How can I help them become better competitor and a better athlete? And I was floored by that because every time everybody talks about is like, this warm and fuzzy kind of let's hang out together and see, how are you doing today kind of
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And CC cleared that up and said, No, no, that's fine and good, but really it's not about that. It's about what's going on with them as athletes as and on the court. So
Yeah, I love it. Cece is one of my favorite people. Introduced to Cece, man, now 5 years ago, and she's just always been in our corner. She's logged in and talked to our baseball team, and she really puts things in perspective, right? And she talks about, I mean, again, all of our conversations is really around the environment we create, right? And are we creating the right type of confidence? Are we creating the right type of challenge? Are we giving the right type of support, right? So if we're looking at our environments, right, it has to be within that high challenge, high support, right? It's one of those things we can do hard things, the Kara Lawson or even the Jonah Oliver. Like it's really the price of admission. If we're athletes or if we're coaches, anxiety, depression, like pressure, all these things, the unpredictability about sports, this is what we sign up for. But we
yeah,
really have to take that hard look at the environment. Again, going back to Trevor, talking about mindset. We have growth mindset. We have the stress is an enhancer mindset. What is the type of mindset we're developing? But it's bigger than just the what. It's how we do it every single day. How are we showing up? How are we being intentional? How are we supporting? And so again, like everything is around these same themes about environment, relationships, connection, and it's just pushing forward into the future.
That the second piece of Jonah Oliver's podcast that you had, Matt, that rings exactly true to what you're saying is he makes the statement, it's not about motivation, it's about connecting to what matters.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
again, it's like it's not just getting someone to work their hardest, giving their best effort. It's like we really appreciate that as coaches when we get our best effort and our best attitude. But if it stops there and it's just these measurable factors that we as coaches are trying to connect to, it's limiting.
Yeah.
But when we really break into connection with our athletes on what matters not only to us as coaches, but also what matters to them as student athletes, we crack into this other ability of what they can take their game to, what they can take their character to, what they can do in the
yeah,
classroom, why they want to sit in the front row of class. Instead
Yeah.
of it being, well, coach said we have to do it if we're on the soccer team. No, I want you to be there because I want you to thrive and I want you to want to thrive. But that connection to what they need is what creates that. It's not a rule. It can't be a rule. It has to be a connection that matters to them.
right. I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
That
Go
goes
ahead, Mike.
back to sorry, Matt, but that goes back to, is it Ron Sears?
Ron Siers. I was actually
Sires.
gonna transition to Ron. So you read my mind there, Michael.
Okay, so let me just get this out first and then you can take it away. All
Yeah.
right. He says you don't want to get buy-in, you want to get belief in. And that's
Yes.
exactly what Jarrett was just talking about.
Yeah.
And because it's not about, oh, I'll buy in, I'll do this because coach told me to do it. No, I'll do this because I believe in this. I believe this is going to help me be a better athlete, be a better person, be a better student, whatever the case may be. So yours
Yeah,
now.
you read my mind, Michael. So Ron is such an interesting guy. I mean, here he is. He's the associate head coach at Salisbury University for baseball, but he's
Yep.
also a full-time professor of leadership and they have a whole coaching athletic minors program there. But what's really cool about Ron is he's gone through so many different iterations of leadership, right? And the thing he was talking about on our podcast is like his next iteration now, it's not just leadership or followership. It's now this whole idea of a purpose ship, right? And that ties into what Jonah's talking about. Again, Jonah was talking about it's not about how hard things is, it's how important they are. Right? What is the purpose? What is the driving mission? What are you committing to? Right? Like you were saying, Mike, it's not buying in. I want our team to commit to the shared vision, commit to the shared mission, commit to the values, commit to the standards. Like you were saying, Jared, it's not, oh, I have to go sit in the front row. I get to go sit in the front row because I'm committed to something bigger than just a scoreboard, bigger than a tactics, right? And Brook Cups and Ryan Hawk, they talked about that too with the inner scoreboard versus the external. In the you get so caught up. Think about society, guys. We get so caught up with the external scoreboard, right? We're so worried about results. We're so worried about this win at all cost mentality. Think about our youth right now and think about the burnout and think about chasing after these college dreams where only 6% of kids go on to college. Like we're focused on the wrong scoreboard and we're getting kids to buy into something that's really not going to create lasting memories or create better versions of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I had Ryan and Brooks, down on my notes to speak about today, specifically with the internal versus external scoreboard and the pressures. I think, most of our listeners are coaches.
Yeah.
And I think we were surprised after 5 or 6 episodes at how many student athletes came up to us at school that were like, "Hey, I listened to the podcast." And it's like,
Right. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. That originally probably wasn't where we were thinking our audience was going to come from.
Yeah.
But they bought into it because podcast is a thing and it's growing and it's a fad now that everybody does. And to get the feedback of what we were trying to do and then get some input on talking about things like internal scoreboard versus external scoreboard and the pressures that our student athletes feel from their peers, from their teachers, from their coaches at times, and making sure that we are focusing on those internal things that we can control and that we're continuing to drive forward with our why and our how versus, well, scoreboard says you lost again, so you apparently failed. Well, that's where the conversation ends. And all these pressures that are sitting on our shoulders as athletes, sitting on our shoulders as coaches, are our goals or um, expectations that the world around us is putting on us. And then we start to make those more important than our internal scoreboard qualities because the pressure outweighs our focus. And we start being concerned about what is someone else going to say? What are the fans going to say? What's that parent going to say when I'm walking back to the locker room and I've got to walk past them and we had a poor result? Is that going to affect me as a coach? Is that going to affect our athletes? And making sure that the internal is the focus and reducing that pressure and focusing on the what matters because it's truly what makes programs special.
Yeah.
And I would say that kind of goes to Ceci again. Sorry to
Yeah.
bring that up, but about the junk food confidence and the
Yeah.
healthy food confidence. Because if you are winning and you're only concerned about that, then that gives you that junk food confidence.
Yeah.
Because it's not because that's the only thing that you're worried about, and you're not worried about what really is important. How are you approaching the game? How are your relationships with your play with the rest of your teammates and things like that? So, which really leads to the more healthy food confidence, right? That she was talking about. And you know what I like to go to on that too is that because it's kind of one of my pet peeves too about like working out players is more like a junk food confidence, you know? There's
Yeah.
it's you're in well, for me, you're in an air-conditioned gym.
Mm.
There's nobody else there.
Yeah.
You know, I put some cones out, you dribble through them, and you shoot a layup uncontested, and you feel like, "Wow, I am really good at this."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and then you get in a game and you can't do anything because people are in your face. They're, trying to steal the ball. They're trying to stop you from getting to the rim, all this kind of stuff. So, I just
Yeah, I think a lot of that, like when we're talking about that and we're looking at that, we're looking at the environment we're creating, right? And Jared, I hear you talking a lot about the language you're using as leaders and as coaches. But then we also have to look at, what Cece's talking about, junk food versus healthy food. A lot of that comes back to our practice environment, guys. And
Yeah.
what are we doing? And we've had a lot of conversations with our guests about how do we create a better practice environment? How can we be a little bit more deliberate? And I always pair the junk food and healthy food with Trevor's jungle
yeah,
tiger versus zoo tiger. So I know, Mike, you put that in your notes. I wonder if you wanted to talk about that. How do those things correlate as far as us creating a practice environment?
yeah, because the zoo tiger, everything's predictable.
Yeah.
And so, like when we run that same drill over and over and over again, and eventually the players become very good at it, very good
Yeah.
at running that, or running the dummy offense, or the play against 5-on-0 out of bounds play or something like that, right? But he said that the players need to be stretched, not but he qualified it by saying like not ridiculous amounts, so that they like it's impossible for them to do,
Right.
but just in little increments in small ways. That really resonated with me, is that you don't just take a kid who has pre-algebra and say, okay, next you're going to do calculus.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do because I need to stretch you. It's the same thing on the court or on the field. You can't have them do that. So and the other thing he said, you know what? It's going to look messy
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
initially. When
Yeah.
you're pushing them, when you're stretching them, it's gonna look messy.
Yeah.
Can you handle that? I had a mentor
Yeah.
of mine at a clinic that would always tell me, "Hey, do you have the courage to allow your kids to
Yes.
play
Yeah.
freely,
Yeah.
even though it's gonna look like at times you don't know what you're doing as a coach?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that
Yeah.
that is just so cool.
That's so
One
true.
cool
I
thing.
mean, go ahead, Matt.
I was to say one cool thing about Trevor's company, it's the Learning Lab now, but Mike, his original company was called Train Ugly because of that whole
Yeah.
concept that learning is a ugly process, right? We can't have these like easy drills or what drives me crazy is watching our basketball players. They come in, put up the shooting gun, and they'll take 10 shots
Yeah.
from the corner uncontested. They'll take 10 shots at the top of the key, and none of that really translates. So it is a ugly process. So just wanted to share, yeah, his original business was called Train Ugly.
Good.
Yeah, I think, to add on to that, it comes back to defining what success is
Yeah,
because we look for such big picture success, I think a lot of the time in the training environment where it's like, we're hoping that it goes perfect, bang to bang to bang to bang. It looks right, it feels right, we're executing everything at tempo. This is gonna work, and we leave practice. It's like,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
we're for sure using this play tomorrow in the game. And then we do it against an opposition and it is a disaster.
Oh yeah,
And so it's like the patience piece, of,
Yeah.
of all of the coaching experience that I've been fortunate to have over so many years, that is one of the biggest factors that I've come across with coaches that I'm trying to help is they're just not patient enough to let something develop.
yeah,
It's so it because it didn't work 2 times in a row, I've gotta go fix it now, which
yeah,
is to exactly what Mike is saying, like, you've got to allow it to just be bad for a bit.
yeah,
Let them struggle with it. Let it be ugly. Let them work through it, because when it's hard and it's not working, they are thinking about it more. They are focusing on why it's not working, and they will find solutions that we didn't have the confidence in them finding, and sometimes they can teach us something if we have enough patience to be okay with it not looking good. And I think that that's where one of the huge pressures comes in with where the very first comment that we were talking about with Brett White and being vulnerable and
Yeah,
having trust in those around you and your peers.
yeah,
Because we all have coached many, many years. We've all been that coach where someone walks into the gym, someone comes onto the field. We're young coaches, they're watching, and we want to kill it. And
yeah,
we want it
Yep.
to look amazing. And the worst thing that can ever happen to us is a simple exercise just fall apart
yeah,
because then we feel like we got to go and fix it. And we're so worried about imagery or, the perception that we know what the heck
Yeah.
we're doing because we know what we're doing, but it doesn't look like it to the outside world that we are not willing to allow something to fall apart so that it can be rebuilt with better understanding. And so, that idea of vulnerability, I just think it comes back over and over and over again. Anytime something's not going well, I would probably just encourage somebody to be vulnerable and okay, things aren't working, okay, we're on a little slump, we haven't got a few results in a few different games in a row, whatever it might be. Go ask your players, how do they feel? What do you think we need to do differently? What do you think we need to bring in the practice environment? Hey Matt, hey Mike, what are you seeing from the outside about intensity, too much demand, too light, too soft, whatever it might be? Because we as coaches care so deeply that sometimes we blind ourselves from what's right in
Yeah.
front of us of what we need. And I think
Yeah.
Levi Nelson broke it down really nicely with his LEAD acronym
yeah,
regarding how to approach process.
yeah,
And, his week, Monday through Friday, they broke down their love, effort, attitude, and discipline, and they focused on a specific one each day as a staff, which I thought was super cool. So on Monday sessions, as a staff, they're going to run their session just like normal, but they're going to only focus on really pushing the love factor. Whatever it is, they're going to figure out a way to make sure that the team feels the love and we're going to be probably a little more patient. We're going to be a little bit more praising when things go well, whatever it might be. They get to Tuesday, they really focus on the effort. They get to Wednesday, they're really focusing on the attitude. They get to
yeah,
Thursday, it's really focused on the discipline. And then on Friday, they try and put it all together and have a collaborative, collective, lead focused exercise or session. And I just thought, man, that's what we lose all the time. We think that details and complexity and being elaborate as a coach shows your ability as a coach is to be
yeah.
complicated and difficult. Whereas this is polar opposite. This is just here's what we're going to do, and let's just focus on this piece. And if we can end the session today and the team can feel that the love was there and we gave that, we've won something. And then we can stack upon it. And I just loved the clarity that he came with from that angle.
Yeah, big shout out to Levi. Levi, I've known for a few years. We actually have worked together with the Positive Coaching Alliance, and now we're partnering with the Way of Champions. But there's so many things, Jared. When you were just talking, like I was just thinking about what. Well, one, it goes back to our CC again. Mike, I know you'll be happy for this one. Cece, she shared, going back to this whole learning is ugly. Like, think about the study that Cece shared on our episode where she was talking about the two different groups. We had a
Yeah.
group A and a group B, and what they did in group A, this was in the batting cage. Group A got 40 pitches. They knew exactly what pitches they're going to get. So they got 10 fastballs, 10 curveballs, 10 changeups, whatever. So they knew the order and they're killing it in practice. Group A is absolutely smoking the ball, right? And they feel great in that moment. Group B, however, they got the mixed pitches. It could have been a fastball, then a curveball, then a changeup. Like they didn't know what was coming. So they struggled in practice. Like they felt like crap. They had zero confidence, but then they looked at performance, right? And Group B outperformed Group A every single time because they created an environment that was more game like. Right. And I was thinking as you're talking about all that stuff, Jared, I was thinking about some of the stuff that Mark Bennett was talking about, where
Mhm.
he says a lot of times when we're trying to fix our athlete, we go right to tactic and strategy. But a lot of time it could just be a behavior thing. As he's talking about a lot of times it might be a scanning issue, like, but we're looking at the wrong thing. We're always trying to fix just the tactic, but we have to look at the behavior. What are the behaviors put in place? How do we fix the behavior to get to the performance? Right? It's not the other way around. We chase after outcomes. No, we have to look at behaviors. And he talks a lot about, Jared, you mentioned, redefining success. And what Mark talks about is creating a success criteria for every single session, sort of
Yep.
like what Levi did when he with his lead acronym. It's like, okay, success looks like this today. And in his teams, all the players will name 3 things. Let's say we're working on defense. These 3 things are going to define success. So what you do in practice, you actually pause and you check. Like as a coach, you can actually pause and check and say,
Yep.
hey, are we hitting our criteria? But again, it's just being a little bit more intentional and purposeful. What we're doing in practice, does it translate to performance?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ron Siers also said something like that too. Like he continually talked about vulnerability based trust,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that getting emphasizing all of their standards in everything that they do,
Oh yeah.
and not just because my Morgan Wood, the Hall of Fame coach that I worked for, said it's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize.
Yes.
Yep.
So they think, well, I told him to do this, but you never emphasized that, so it didn't become important to them.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of deal. But he also said that he asks them all these questions at the end of practice or during practice. Well, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What was the point of this?
Yeah.
Or, well, how did you feel when you were doing this? What were your frustrations?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things, which I thought was just a really excellent way to go about helping the players become more owners, have more ownership of the team, and then feel like they're more a part of something that's bigger than them as well. And just one last thing on the vulnerability thing is that basically when you are in love or when you offer somebody trust, you're being vulnerable. And isn't that what this all about? Love and trust, in
Yeah.
our with our teams and our communities or whatever it is. So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, love is that secret ingredient, right? We hear so many coaches. Phil Jackson talked about that during his era with the Bulls and the Lakers. It's like we had all the talent, we had all the systems, we had our triangle offense, but the thing that kept everything together, the thing that was our glue was love. Right. And it's just changing. Jared, you mentioned it at the beginning. It's changing the way we lead, right? And it's looking at today's athlete, our Gen Z athletes and Gen Alpha athletes. We can't stick to the old way of coaching. It just doesn't work anymore, right? Betsy Butterick talks about this stuff a lot as far as connecting with Gen Z. It has to be more of this cooperative
Yep.
environment, right? We have to listen a little bit more to our athletes. We have to give them more ownership. Mike, you talked about it, the best teams are the player-led teams, right? We have to give ownership to our kids. The command and demand and the fear-based environment, it doesn't work anymore. It'll give you success for a little bit, but what we're trying to do, right? Collectively as a group, the reason for this podcast is how can we create something that is sustainable? How are we meeting our kids where they're at? We talked about just the other day with Dr. Josie Perry, we talked about neurotypical athletes versus neurodivergent. And what was crazy, guys, is she talked about, our kids with ADHD or our neurodivergent kids, they are walking into an environment that's not designed for their brain,
yeah.
right? And we have to be mindful of that as coaches.
It's so interesting. We talked, I think it was probably our third or fourth podcast and that we did it all together. And we were talking about what is truly defining, what defines you as the student athlete.
Yeah.
And I think I've found that to be an extremely powerful question to my players, individually and collectively to the group, because it makes them think about what they want to define them. And so rarely it has anything to do with how they perform collectively as a season. Their defining moment is not whether we've won a state championship or not. And we ask them day one, week one, with all of our programs, what are your goals? And of course, we're going to get 75 to 80% of them that are going to say we want to win a state championship, and we love that. We've got to have vision. We got to
Yeah.
have things to reach for. But when they really start thinking about it, and this comes right back to what you're saying, Matt, is meeting them where they are. We cannot coach like coaches coached 20 years ago. We have to coach kids the way that they are today to unlock how that brain of theirs works, to make sure that we are helping them create clarity. And I think there is so much going on in their life. It's really not about adding information. It's really about helping them sift through the information that they've already got, getting
Yeah.
crammed into them every second of every day, from their phones, from their lives, you name it. It's an overload of information, and making decisions and being thoughtful and thinking about how to act and being proactive comes down to your ability to process information and think about how you want to respond to something. And as coaches, we talk about player led teams, leadership from us. Matt, you say it all the time, leadership starts with us,
Yeah.
right? But it's not about us.
Yeah.
And it's really teaching the players how to lead in what they believe in because of what they want to be defined by, that they can then completely commit to. They completely want it. And we talked about that idea of like a river flowing. And what is
Yep.
powerful is harnessing and funneling energy. We don't want to slow down the energy. We don't want to be pushing the water. We want to be the frameworks of the river. We just want to help them steer things, keep
Yeah.
them together, keep them believing in the same things, and keep it a focused, channeled force. Because once it starts flowing and the framework is built, now you just feed it and you feed it and you feed it and you support it and you let them know that you're there for them. And yes, we're perceived as the leaders of this great thing as coaches that have had successful programs, but at the end of the day, it's because we've built the schematic, we've built the infrastructure and architecture that now the players can just really thrive within.
Yeah.
And it's helping them sift through all of that stuff to understand who they are and what they want to be and how they can go about living this crazy life.
So real quick, Jared and Mike, we'll get you back on in a second. So thinking about what you're just saying about championship, right? And our baseball team just won the state championship, and leading up to that, like the whole thing we wanted them to commit to was that bigger purpose. Because guys, you all know, like we win a championship and that feeling goes away like 3 or 4 days later. Right. And I think about, Sherri Coale's story about the golden ball, right? And her team, they were so dedicated to win the state championship after being runner up the year before. They accomplished the goal, right? They're all celebrating, they're all fired up. And guess what? They leave the arena, they get 10 miles down the road, and they're like, damn, we forgot the trophy. They had to turn around. They had to turn around and go back and get the trophy, which just proves our point that it's not
Yeah.
about this materialistic thing. It's not about a damn trophy. That's not
Yeah.
what it's about, right? And Brook Cutts talks about that too, where it's like when he creates his vision with his basketball team, and Brook has won multiple state championships, it's about something that is going to be sustainable and that can continue the next day, right? So
Yes.
his vision for his team is always attack every opportunity with purpose.
Yeah.
So his teams would win a state championship, and guess what? If they won on a Saturday, they can wake up on a Sunday and still attack the next opportunity with purpose. If we're just chasing after a trophy, if I win on Saturday, I wake up on Sunday, I have no reason to get better because I'm chasing after an outcome that's not even guaranteed. And so I'll kick it back over to you, Michael.
Yeah. So when I looked at like our really successful programs this year, boys lacrosse, baseball, both of the soccer teams, um, it if you looked at them and put them on paper, you would say, okay, they're good, but they aren't the best team around. Okay. Yet they went to state semis, won championships, regional finals, and did all this. And it wasn't because of their talent. It was because that everybody believed in,
Yes.
and it was the love and the trust that the coaches created in their players that enabled them to do that. I just thought that was really cool because, um, I mean, because everybody's flabbergasted when a team that is laden with talent doesn't perform well. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, they don't have the secret sauce,
Yeah.
right? They have all these players, but they don't have the secret sauce of the love and the trust. And when Jared also talked about the role of the coach, I was thinking, of course, to the Matrix. Um, Neo is asking Morpheus about the Oracle, and he says, well, so what does she know everything? She would say she knows enough. And then, well, what is she gonna like tell me what I need to do? He said, no, think of her as a guide. She will help you find your path. So I'm just like, and you know what? I consider myself the same way in the classroom. That's why I do the Socratic method of teaching in the classroom, asking questions like, most of our guests are saying that, and that we need to co-create with our players now. And that's what's going on. Just take Coach Carter, right? I mean, perfect example of he was gonna, who said it? Betsy Butterick in
Yeah.
coaching Gen Z players said we need to replace judgment with understanding. I was like,
Yes.
whoa,
Yes.
because we're all like, oh, these Gen Z are, that they can't do this, they won't do that. We're all negatives about what they can't do. We're just judging them as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to understand them, meeting them where they are, and then get them to believe in what you're trying to sell them. And I said, and I think that that's the way Coach Carter was before, where they were judging them, and it created that kind of rift between the coaches and the players. But then he decided this year he was going to do that. There was going to be no distractions. He was going to
Yep.
be in charge of what was going on, and he got the coaches to believe in it, and then he got the players to believe in it. And look what they did. I mean, the most successful lacrosse program in the area. And
Yep.
even though they didn't, go to the state finals or anything, I mean, they were. I told the players too. I said it was a pleasure to watch you guys play.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
first undefeated season in Canterbury
yeah,
history, and a lot of that, Mike, ties into what Cath Bishop talks about. And I had the privilege of talking with Cath yesterday, and in her second edition of her book, The Long Win, she talks about we have to redefine our success metric. And what she talks
Yep.
about in her book, in this new chapter, she talks about we need to focus on the story we're creating, the
yeah,
impact we're having, and the experience we're creating every single day. So, and you guys all know I love talking about story. So it's all about the story, right?
yeah,
Every season starts, I always challenge every single coach, or I'll challenge every single athlete. I'll say, start thinking about your story, start creating your story, right? So we have to live through story. We have to think about impact. And for us as coaches, impact is beyond just making them a great athlete, right? I think we talked about that in our first episode together. It's like, ask me in 20 years if I'm a successful coach, right? It's about
exactly.
the impact we're having every single day. It's like impact and influence. And then again, it comes back to experience. What are we creating beyond a scoreboard, beyond a result, beyond a trophy that you sometimes forget in the arena? It's not even that important, right? Are we creating that experience that's going to last forever? And that's how we should be defining success in sports.
You guys will have to help me. I can't remember, but I'm thinking about one of the podcasts that you did, Matt, with one of the guests, where he was talking about the A rating in talent and the A rating in attitude, and then you've got the B rating in attitude, but you've still got the A rating in attitude, and then you've got the B rating in
Uh,
both categories. I can't remember who said it, but it comes back to exactly what we're talking about. Like, yes, we've all had that player from time to time that was the A level talent player, just unbelievably talented, that had an unbelievable attitude, but they're
yeah,
far and few between, right?
Yeah,
We don't get very
of
many of
course.
them. And then you've got a lot of players that have potential to be A level talent, but they're a B or a C level when it comes to the attitude, the belief,
yeah,
the wanting to be committed to something that's bigger than themselves. And then you've got so many athletes that we come across that are maybe the B or even the C plus in the talent
Yeah,
category, that
so
are the
true.
A plus lover of what we do and why we do it. And they were just saying, emphasizing over and over again that as young coaches, we're always chasing the A and the B talent, and we're
Yeah,
evaluating everything else. We're just letting it go, and we're just seeking the talent. And I think the more years you coach, the more important you start realizing it is to be finding the highest quality attitude, character, identity, team guys. And then if you can get talent on top of that, what a huge advantage that you now have,
yeah,
that can be a real fueler to what your program believes in. As coaches, I don't think that there's any better compliment than when we have a student athlete that graduates, or a student athlete on senior day or the last game of the season, that comes to us and says, "Thank you for letting me be a part of this program."
yeah,
It's not about the minutes. It's not about playing the position that they loved. It's not about the trophies. It's none of that. It's about being part of something that was bigger than themselves, that they get to be a part of forever. And that's something that we emphasize big time in soccer, is that you are just leaving us. You always get to come back, and you will always be a part of us, and our circle only gets bigger. And so that idea of driving program over driving teams and driving the mentality and and the environment and the behaviors creates this steadfast culture that kids love coming back to, because it's so much more than just being on the field and even playing. Having alumni come back that just want to be a part of what we're doing and practice and helping and conversations, that's better than any trophy in my mind that I've ever been a part of winning. Was just recognizing that we have made a difference, and we've valued the person over the player and what they could do for us, and we've put ourselves in the position of serving and making sure that we did everything we felt we could for them to be successful as human beings.
Love it. Love it.
And just
What
think
you
about
got,
that.
man?
What I sent you last night, Matt, was one of my players from 4 years ago just graduated from Vassar College in a computer science degree.
Yep.
And he was the best player that I coached here. Now Barrick was right before I started coaching.
Yeah.
So, but he's the second all-time leading scorer here. I mean, and that's with only 4 years.
Yeah.
I think the number one leading scorer had, played varsity probably for 6 years.
Yeah.
And
Started in 7th grade.
right. And so with Alan, he was a great player in the area too. He was one of the top 5 for Mr. Basketball in this area, and a very good season of very good athletes and very good players that all went on to play Division I basketball. And for him to basically, he had to pick between basketball or staying at Vassar and being a student, because it's very, very difficult college. And he's in computer science, and he can only do something one way, and that's all in.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was here, he was all in, getting himself prepared to play college basketball, which he did. And then he got to the point where they were coming in conflict, and he had to make a choice. And he decided he'd give up his love of basketball to continue as a student. And he just got his degree. And I'm telling you, it is a unbelievable success story for me. And then I just text him congratulations. He says, "Really appreciate you, coach, and all the life lessons you taught me, as well as help push me through to get where I'm at. Thank
Yeah.
you for everything. Forever grateful, and you'll always be there for always being there for me and my family." So
That's
that's
awesome.
that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's an impact that, because I cared about him as a person, he didn't even continue with basketball, but he's going to be successful in whatever he does because he has that kind of mentality and drive.
Yeah. Love
I
it.
just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything. I'm just trying to say that, what you were talking about is so important, and it's really why we do what we do. And
Yes.
if we lose sight of that and only look at the wins and the losses, then what's the point?
Yeah. It's a shallow, nerve-wracking, dark place when a coach
I love that
focuses
you
on
put that
W's
nerve
and
wracking in
L's.
there too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
true.
But man, fellas, I feel like we could probably talk all day about this, which we
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
probably
we could.
stop hitting record and continue our conversation. But here we are, guys. Like episode 25, we've had some amazing guests, we've had some amazing content, so many lessons, a lot of growth. We were able to implement a lot of it on our campus. I don't know, I just kind of wanted to wrap up with you guys, man. What are some things that you want to work on going into the summer? What are some things that you're going to be doing this summer to continue to grow as a coach and a leader?
Yeah, I will just say more reading for me. I mean, one of the reasons I love these podcasts is because I feel like every single time I listen to one with one of these guests, I take something away from it. And, to keep that learner mindset and making sure that there's always something that I haven't heard before. There's always a different way of delivering something. There's always a different way of approaching a student athlete. To be the best leader possible, I think we've got to continue to push ourselves and continue to be vulnerable and lean on the people that are around us. That's what I'm going to be shooting for.
Love it. Michael.
Yeah, well, I'm now back on the bench after a 2-year hiatus.
Yes.
But so I really want to bring what we've been talking about and my knowledge of this to trying to reshape the basketball program and really get everybody to believe in what we're trying to do now because they had 7 seniors and no JV team, so it's going to look messy for a
Yeah.
little while.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while for that thing to not look messy. So I'm going to use that what we've been talking about to try to help our athletes and my son who's a first year coach to kind of get through and handle all of this and still keep the focus on what is important. So,
Yeah.
and also obviously I'm going to read some more too to add to what we've got and what we've done here. But I just want to thank you, Matt, for being able to get all of these amazing coaches, leaders to help our coaches here, to help me here, to help, anybody else who picks it
Absolutely.
up. Cause I've got friends that are like, hey man, I love that podcast.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
awesome. They're in Maryland or, Wisconsin or wherever. So, I mean, it's just an amazing thing that you were able to do. And, that's just because of all the work that you put in to making the culture around here and helping our kids become better leaders. So kudos to you, buddy.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, fellas. Yeah, man, I get all fired up because anytime I have downtime, it's like, oh man, what we got to do next? So for me, going into summer, guys, we have such a great system in place right now, but I know it can get even better, right? And that's what gets me excited is understanding like the next iteration of what we're going to do next year, right? And again, I always lean on what Cath was talking about and talking about story, impact, and experience, right? That's my dedication this summer is really thinking about what's the story we want to create coming back in August? What's the impact we're going to have on every single kid, whether you're a student athlete or just a student at Canterbury? Like we got to think bigger picture, right? And for me, I think the next iteration is really getting everyone involved, right? And working with our teachers and working with everyone on our campus and working beyond our campus. Like this isn't just about one school. This is about impact across the US or even globally now. It's one of those things. Let's look at our story. Let's look at the impact. Let's look at the experience we can create for everyone beyond just being an athlete, right? Thinking about your story with Alan, Mike, it was so much more than just being a student athlete. He developed into such a great young man, right? And he didn't just identify as an athlete. Think about the stories we can create for every single person that walks in here.
Or even when he was here initially, he only identified himself as an athlete. That's all he saw himself as a basketball player. And
Yeah.
so that defined who he was. So I think that's why he worked so hard because he wanted it to be seen as a success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the court.
Yeah.
That's what really defined him. And now that doesn't define him anymore. He's going beyond that. Well beyond that.
Yeah.
So
And,
that's
and,
awesome.
and I think a great challenge, great question. I always like to wrap up with coaches is when you're not coaching, what are you doing to become a better coach? Right. And that Cody Royle, we just talked about this. The great irony of coaching is we're always telling our athletes they need to get better. You need me as your coach to get you better, right? But then we can say we can do it by ourselves, but
Yeah.
we cannot become better coaches by ourselves. So I think going into the summer, when you have downtime, like you guys were saying, read a book. I mean, we have mentors. You go to Barnes and Nobles, there's thousands of mentors right in there, right?
Yeah.
Find a mentor, find that coach, find someone that's going to look at your blind spots, give you honest feedback, push you to the next version of yourselves. Because guess what? If we come back as better leaders, our student athletes are going to become better people. Because again, Jared, I always say it's not about us, but it starts with us. So what do we do this summer to grow and come back the best versions of ourselves as leaders so we can lead the next generation and do something better than us?
Yep. Excellent.
So I think with that, fellas, that's the wrap for
That's a good way to end it.
Absolutely.
25. Who would have thought, guys? But I mean, it's been awesome. It's been a great experience. I have a whole bunch lined up for this summer, so we're gonna keep this pushing, and we're gonna keep growing this and keep getting the content out there. So we appreciate.
Thanks both of you for helping me learn a heck of a lot more about coaching, teaching, and living.
Celebration's everything.
Yeah, and to our listeners and to our coaches, we appreciate y'all for tuning in for these 25. And we got much more coming. So thanks again for listening to the Being Champions podcast.